Welcome, gamers, to this week's episode of Last Call Gaming. We're on episode 210. Today is February 28th. It is a Friday. My name is Craig Perales, and joining me is Mandrew Montemare.
Happy Monster Hunter Day.
Ooh, is that officially today? It was in like a, not an alpha. It was doing some alpha
stuff, they had a beta. I think it was last week, maybe a little bit before that. But yeah, just dropped, well, I guess last night, but technically today is the day of release.
Were you playing late last night to like...
No, I was playing Pirate Yakuza, and then I was just going to create my character. I'm like, I'll just do it when I get home, because I got off work early today. So I was like, when I get home, I'll just sit in there and die, because I think once you create your character, it kind of throws you into like a tutorial style thing. I'm like, I don't want to have to redo all this stuff.
Yeah, that'll be a long one. Well, speaking of that too, I was putting this on and it made me remember. If any of you guys had Astrobot uninstalled, reinstall it, because just like they did a month or so ago, they did those 5 free levels. They just put out, they're doing another set of 5 levels, so it's free for you if you guys haven't played them. There's 2 out right now. Actually, no, there's 3 out. I've beaten 2 of them. One of them is the newest one, and I believe they come out every Thursday or every Friday. So if you've been waiting to play a little more Astrobot, definitely check that out. So with that being said, guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. If you guys are interested in following us on any of our social media, our Linktree link is in the description. It can take you to our Instagram, our Twitter X's. And if you guys are listening to the audio-only version of this podcast, you can find us on your podcast platform of choice, whether that is on iTunes or Spotify or anything like that. So before we get going, we like to do... What are you up to? We take a second and talk about what we've been playing, what we've been watching. So, do you want to go first? Second?
I'll go first. Sorry, okay, I already put my hand up. Sorry.
When the hand's up, I bow down.
Normally you defer to me, so I was kind of ready to go.
Okay, go.
I was just telling Craig before this, I was like, you know what? I haven't really watched anything. Last night that popped up on my feed on YouTube, because I follow A&E, because I'm not into like modern wrestling, but lots of like classic wrestling. They have a series on there that I think came out like 2 years ago now, but I just noticed it on there, and I think they just recently added it. If you don't have A&E, it's all on their YouTube. It's called WWE Rivals. Have you seen that?
No, never even heard of it.
So
I've heard of Marvel Rivals.
They already had like the cool separate biography stuff. Now they have one where the ones that I watched last night were like Undertaker versus Kane, and so cool. It follows like Inception to their first meeting to people breaking down everything. All the Brothers of Destruction, pretty much to the end of like career, and they had another one that was like Mankind and Triple H, and like their whole big feud.
So that's the stuff I want to.
They have a Rock one with The Rock and Steve Austin and Bret Hart. So the Dudley Boys, and then Edge and Christian.
Nice.
So
Boys.
So they have like a whole bunch of those on there, and they're really good watches. Obviously, if you watch a lot of those stuff, there is some like reused footage, but there's lots of like new stuff and interviews, and they do bring in other wrestlers. But in between each thing, they actually have like a panel sometimes of the people talking about it, with modern wrestlers and their the influence it had on them and them seeing it as a kid. And the host is Freddie Prinze Jr.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, you always forget how big of a fan of wrestling he is and how big of a Star Wars fan he is.
I didn't know I knew he was a Star Wars fan from watching the stuff. I didn't know he was a big wrestling fan. So I thought he was just in it on the one. And then when I watched the second one, I'm like, oh, he must be hosting this. That's kind of cool. So he has like a little panel, and sometimes it'll just be one-on-one with someone. Other times there'll be like 4 or 5 people, and they kind of talk about it in the impact, or like even how it influenced them and their memories as being a kid and stuff.
That's
like that.
Cool. I want to check that out.
And there's people that'll be on there like JBL, and I think like Paul Heyman, and then modern, like I said, like more modern people that I don't know their names. I think like Becky Lynch is like one of them. So either way, if you're into that stuff, they have like a whole bunch of them that are on there. I've only watched the Undertaker, Kane, and I fell down the rabbit hole and I watched the Mankind Triple H one. So
what are they? 20 minutes, hours?
They're like 47-ish to like 120, I think is the longest one that I've seen. So either way, definitely good. And there, at no point was I like watching, I'm like, this is lame, I already kind of know this or whatever. And
nice, that sounds cool.
As far as playing anything, I finished Avowed. I really liked it a lot. The main reason I wanted to bring it up is because towards the end, because I was kind of prepping, obviously, for the baby to come, is I bought a Fire Stick the other day, and I set it up in the bedroom so that way I could be playing in there while Christina's sleeping, because she kind of wants me around, obviously, more. And you can stream games to there with, like, their Game Pass app, and it actually worked really well. I played a majority...
I was going to ask you about that.
I played a majority of Avowed on that, and I didn't have any problems. I don't feel like it was.
No latency.
I don't feel like the latency was bad. It was almost like 1-to-1. It ran perfectly fine. Graphically, I thought it still looked fine too. It's obviously not like 4K or anything crazy, but it went really, really good. And there's all kinds of other games on there too, like Sniper Elite and just pretty much anything on the Game Pass that it almost kind of made me think of all the weird stuff Microsoft's done. And I'm like, okay, like having done this now, I can kind of see your vision. I just wish they had something that was more like how on my iPhone though, because on my iPhone, because they had like the weird whole App Store purchasing, you don't stream the Game Pass stuff. I can actually remote control my console, and my console doesn't start up, but anything I can play on my console, I can play it through my iPhone. How well it'll run, like Warzone or something like that, I don't know. It's not for multiplayer stuff. But like last night, I'm like, oh, maybe Yakuza will be on there. And unfortunately, it's not on the cloud gaming side.
Gotcha.
So once they kind of get something like that going, for something that's, I have my primary console in my room, it was nice just to walk into a separate part of the house and just have a controller there and be ready to go.
Well, yeah, because I've got a few Fire Sticks, so I wonder if was it nothing special, right? It wasn't like one of the newer Fire Sticks?
I think it does have to be one of the newer ones from like last year or before, okay. But they were only like $40 at Target.
Yeah, and then it sounds like it's like a nice thing you could take on, even if you're just traveling, go to a hotel room.
That was my thinking too, and I even called my brother because I'm like, oh, well, you have your kids and stuff like that. If you don't want to buy a whole console for them, there's tons of free games for them on the Game Pass, and you can just do it with the Fire Stick. It's like, oh, that's a great idea.
There you go, monkey boy.
And then I did start Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. I hate saying the name because it's so long, but I'm having so much fun with it. It's just a fun, crazy, chaotic game. Still that over-the-top Yakuza feel. But surprisingly, something I thought I would hate the most is the whole pirating aspect, going around on a boat and sailing.
How is the water sailing? Because that's usually the hard part for a lot of games to nail.
No, it's so good, and it feels really good. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then even so, they take it a step further, so you do naval combat, and when you're fighting somebody else, you have like machine guns on the front, and then you could ram them. You can upgrade your guns, and then you have cannons too that can do different things. So I've upgraded my cannons to where they shoot like a laser beam out of them for like a certain amount of time. So I'll pull up to somebody and I'll just like keep it on them and tear them apart. Or you can even just get off the hole and shoot like a rocket launcher. And there's just all kinds of different little things you can do for your ship that I didn't really care for. I like the sailing and like the older Assassin's Creeds, but I didn't care so much for the comics. I just felt like sometimes it's just so slow. Like this is just so much faster, and I think it's just a lot more gratifying. So I'm loving it.
Nice. So they did something that Skull and Bones or whatever, Crossbones couldn't do.
Yeah, I guess not. Either way, I think it's really good. And if that was something that was maybe holding you back, because that was my whole big thing. It's like I don't know, because I'm not crazy for like pirating. You can totally just not do it. There's sections of it, but I think it feels so good to do that it was going to be my least favorite part, but now it is one of my favorite parts, and I'm trying to knock that out before I do anything else.
Nice.
What about you?
As far as what I've been watching, I ended up finishing the show called Game Changers. It came out in 2024. It's on HBO Max. It's a combination of different interviews that are behind-the-scene looks at certain games. So, for example, they've got one that was on Call of Duty, which I really think you would like. There's one
I forgot all about that show.
So did I, and I was cruising on HBO, and I saw it. I'm like, oh, because I got to episode like 4, and I was like, oh yeah, I never finished it. So I kept going. I think there's like 9 episodes. There's one on Madden. There's one on board games like Operation Monopoly and things like that. So they're really kind of standalone episodes. So if you don't want to watch all of them, it's simple enough to just look at it and be like, oh, I'm interested in this one. Like the Minecraft one was actually the one I was least interested in watching because I'm like, I don't play, I don't really care. But I'm like, I'm just going to watch them all. It was actually really interesting, and I learned kind of the most about something I didn't know that much at all on. I couldn't find a trailer that I was going to play if you're watching the YouTube version, because when I started looking it up, there's just so many things called Game Changers. There was one that's about a UFC documentary. There's one that's the Mighty Ducks trailer is called Game Changer. There's a Game Changers that's based on Jeopardy, Game Changers that was a John McCain documentary, and Game Changers that was a James Cameron vegan documentary. So finding it on YouTube to try to show it off was easier, not so easy as it said to be done. But if you have HBO, definitely check it out. It's got a lot of cool stories. Sega Nintendo. I mean, if you watch a lot of video game documentaries like we do, you will see a lot of rehashed kind of things. But there is enough in there that kept me interested all the way through. As far as what I've been playing, I also beat Avowed. I ran through it pretty quick. It's definitely a fun game. I don't think, and it's going to be kind of based on what we play the rest of the year, but I know there's some juggernaut titles. I don't see this being a top 5 game for me. I know we were kind of pushing back in the beginning about like IGN giving it a 7. I don't know if it's a 7, maybe a 7.5, but I definitely don't think I'd put it any higher than an 8. So take that for what you will. But the game I did just play and beat, I'm almost at 100%. I'm missing one trophy, and it's going back and doing the mazes, is Vampire's Fall Origins, which is a game that on Xbox runs for about $14. It was on sale for $1.29, so I ended up snagging that. It is, let me see, developed by Early Morning Studio and published by Early Morning Studio and Ultimate Games. It's Vampire Falls Origins is a 2D open world RPG with turn-based combat. You get to create your character, choose your lineage, build your bloodline powers, and venture out into the world. And will you wreak havoc in the land or be the hero people are hoping for? Now, when you're playing on the map, the overworld map, it kind of looks a lot like Diablo, like the way, like an isometric kind of top-down running around game. But the combat is kind of reminds me of those old PC like Flash kind of games. It pops up. It's 2 players at a time. If you're fighting more than one, once you kill them, somebody else will kind of jump in and take their place. The controls are all based on the D-pad of what you want to do. Every third turn, there's a combo move. So out of all these skills that you've built up, you can mix like magic. You can summon bats. You can swing your sword. So you can kind of mix and match what you want to do on who you're fighting. It's got a lot of different weapons. There's a bunch of different builds you can do. Not a bunch of different builds, but multiple. Like Geno played it more armor and weapon heavy, and he was smashing through guys, where my guy, I was playing more health and magic regen. So there's different ways to play it. The real fun in it is when you're running around, there's a lot of hidden bosses that you've got to go find, and certain things you got to do to like summon them. At the end, the game does get a little too long, I think, for its own good, but it doesn't take itself too serious. Like, you run into this guy who's like selling loot boxes, and he's like, he's like, oh man, I don't think we can call them loot boxes. He's like, do you want one? And you buy it for like $100, and it has nothing in it. He's like, oh, sorry, maybe next time. So it's got a lot of funny stuff like that, and yeah, it's a really, really fun, interesting game. I bought it, so if you want to give it a shot, it's on there. But that is what I've been playing. So guys, leave down in the comment section what you guys have been playing and what you guys have been up to. So with that being said, let's get into our main story, and that is that Warner Brothers Discovery has shut down 3 studios, and then by doing so has canceled their big upcoming title, which was Wonder Woman, which was a game that was announced back in 2021. So I do kind of have a little bit here that I'm going to read just to kind of catch you guys up on where WB's coming from and what their background is. So I want to start with that Warner Brothers, when it was Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, has been in trouble financially for a while. Constant projects failing, constant things happening, constant deals that aren't shaking out. And as far back as 2020, when AT&T still owned them, they were actually going to sell all their gaming divisions. And we actually did an episode on it. I'm like, I know we talked about this. And I went back. Andrew and I did one on the following afterwards, but episode 91 is one that Geno and I actually did. And it looked at them being bought up by Microsoft, by Sony, by EA, by Activision. And they actually decided to keep it intact because they were going to start selling off studios like NetherRealms to somebody, Avalanche to somebody, just because they weren't doing so well financially. And they actually decided to hold on to it. And they actually ended up doing a merger with Discovery for $43 billion. And they ended up taking the Warner Brothers Media and becoming Warner Brothers Discovery. And then Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment was rebranded as WB Games, which now housed all their studios. Then when AT&T sold it to Discovery, and this is when David Zaslav got involved as the CEO, he was chopping away and axing a lot of projects. If you guys remember, it was focused at the time more on TV and film. So there was the Batgirl movie that was completely finished that they scrapped. There was the Coyote and Acme movie, which a lot of people said, a lot of the people that saw it said it was a really good movie. They scrapped that and they shelved it. There was a lot of shows like Booster Gold and things like that. So Zaslav was really looking at, we need to cut down all these excess projects and start focusing on what's going to make us money. And unfortunately, it seems to have finally hit their video game division, which is what we're going to dive into. And this is a portion of what was the cause. And it says, during the third quarter of 2024, in a financial call, Warner Brothers Discovery President and CEO David Zaslav and CFO Gunnar Weidenfeld state that the underperformances of Multiverses and Harry Potter Quidditch Champions had added another $100 million to the $200 million write-down to the company's game businesses as of 2024, and that Warner Brothers is now going to focus more on 4 of their successful franchises moving forward, and we'll dive into those in a second. But what they also don't talk about in that paragraph is Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League also was a huge $100 million that was a big flop. So when you're looking at what they just shut down, because a lot of it was we'll talk about Monolith, but they shut down a couple of things. So I just want to put that into perspective that for a while WB hasn't had the best track record, and they've been doing their best to kind of stay afloat and to not sell off all of their video game franchises and things like that. So I just wanted to put that out there so you know that they're still kind of focusing on games, just they're moving in a different direction. And I want to talk about what they shut down. One of the studios they shut down was Player First Games, which was founded in 2019. And as far as I can tell, the only game they were able to put out was Multiverses. And a couple weeks ago, Multiverses finally shut down. So to get rid of this studio, I don't think was a big shocker to anybody.
I think the worst part of it is they bought that studio 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And I actually have on here too, like, because I was putting down, like, I think a bigger part of the problem with why the studio shut down isn't so much some of these games. I think it's just the meddling of Warner Brothers. Because actually, since you bring that up first, the biggest, I think, problem was for them, for Player First, is they put out something that might not have been Smash Bros. Quality, but could compete with Smash Brothers. Plus, they had the IP to back it up, with like Batman, even stuff like
Tunes,
Shaggy, Looney Tunes. This is a game that was extremely hype when it came out. A lot of people were in it. It really kind of captured, I kind of want to say that lightning in a bottle, where everybody was really interested in it. It might not be Super Smash Brothers level, but still you had people that on the back end are like data mining it and like really doing all this research, and you don't really do that for games unless you care about it. That's why like stuff like Call of Duty gets data mined for what's coming down the pipeline in the future. Then what they did is they pulled the game and said that, that was just a beta. I'm not sure if you knew so much about this, because I know you didn't really play it.
I remember we played it kind of in the beginning. I just forget what stage it was, and I do remember it having a really kind of cool battle pass too.
But they pulled it as a beta and then released it way later on and said, like, okay, this is the 2.0, this is the full version. And by then you killed all hype. Why would anyone even absolutely be interested in that at all? You captured this lightning in the bottle, and instead of riding that wave, you pulled it and then just threw it back out there later on for zero reason whatsoever.
Yeah, so to see that they're shutting that one down, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with it, but it makes the right financial decision to do so if the game wasn't getting the traffic that it once upon a time had. The other studio that they shut down was WB Games San Diego. Again, as far as I can tell, they created it in 2019. I didn't see any projects. They were part of a lot of publishing, and they helped out on a lot of games. But their game that was coming out was a unknown project, as far as I could tell, that was supposed to be a big AAA title that now just isn't going to see it. Did you have anything else on WB San Diego? Because there are other divisions like Montreal. They have other divisions. Just San Diego seems to be the one they shut down.
I wonder too if that's the one that was working on that like Flash game that they canceled after like everything that happened with the movie and stuff like that. Because they said, we don't really have any people aren't interested in the Flash, versus the movie didn't do well because it was kind of mid, but not to mention all that stuff with Ezra Miller building up to it, which has nothing to do with the Flash himself.
Right.
So who knows if the game would have done well or not. I don't remember if they ever came out and said what studio exactly under them was working on it, so I wonder if maybe that was supposed to have been their project.
Yeah, that definitely could have been it, but yeah, I couldn't see too much, and maybe we'll find out more in the coming days. And then, honestly, the one that's on everybody's mind and what people are confused about is Monolith Productions.
The GOAT.
Which is a very, very special team that did a lot of cool stuff. I mean, they've been making games as far back as 1997 with games like Blood and Claw and Blood 2, but I think they really kind of hit their peak was in 2005 when they started getting Matrix Online, Fear, and Condemned, Criminal Origins.
I have that written down on here, and I'm glad he brought it up, because that's something that they partnered, I think published through Sega with.
Yeah, Sega was
is Condemned Criminal Origins, and I told Craig about this game all the time.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's the game Andrew loves.
It is such a good horror game. The sequel wasn't as good, but that first one was really good, and I think that kind of brought some of the foundational stuff too for some of the like later Arkham games and stuff, where you're doing like forensic scanning and following a trail and this and that. I don't know that I'd really played something that where you're following this evidence and these clues and trying to put together these puzzles like a detective before I had played this game. So this is a game that is like very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, this is when I think Monolith started getting the ball rolling and showed that they were a very competent team. They were followed up with Condemned 2. They also did Fear 2. They did Gotham City Imposters. They did Guardians of Middle Earth, which a lot of people don't really remember, but after I was watching some footage on it, it seemed pretty good. But clearly the games that put them on the map was their Middle Earth series, which was Shadow of Mordor in 2014 and Shadow of War in 2017. And obviously their next game was coming out was Wonder Woman, and we'll talk about that in a second. So it's unclear really why they would have shut this particular studio down that was actually extremely competent and was doing very well. So I just want to point out this is what Polygon has to say about how they announced it and what was going on and the way they want to kind of move forward. And it says Warner Brothers Games is making big cuts, closing 3 studios, Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and WB Games San Diego, and canceling its long-in-development Wonder Woman game, the publisher told employees on Tuesday. All projects from those studios have been canceled. Monolith Productions developed Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and its sequel Shadow of War, and was working on Wonder Woman. Player First Games was the developer behind the recently scrapped fighting game Multiverses. WB Games San Diego Studio was working on what it once described as an exciting new AAA free-to-play cross-platform game. Employees at Warner Brothers Game Studios were informed of the closures and game cancellations in a communication from executive J.B. Perrett, the CEO and president of global streaming and games for Warner Brothers Discovery. In an email to employees obtained by Polygon, Perrett cited a disappointing 2024 for the company's game division, saying that it would focus on 4 franchises moving forward: Harry Potter and the Hogwarts Legacy, Mortal Kombat, DC, but primarily Batman when it comes to a single-player, character-led games, but may include select other opportunities as the new DCU gets built, and Game of Thrones. And one of the things I was looking at was like, man, it's really hard that you would get rid of something like Shadow of Mordor and those Lord of the Rings games, but when you look at what they're focusing on, because I was like, man, I would probably still want to make Lord of the Rings games over Game of Thrones games. But after looking at it, this is all stuff that they own. Nothing that they're going to have to license, because Lord of the Rings is now owned by Embracer as far back as 2022. So WB owns Mortal Kombat as far back as 2009. It has the HBO or the Harry Potter rights as of 1998. It has DC rights from 1967, and Game of Thrones, which is owned by HBO, but HBO is owned by WB. So it seems like they're really kind of doubling down. But again, if you're looking at that being the plan moving forward, it still doesn't make sense of why you would cut off Monolith. Monolith was working on a DC game, so
a studio that was successful.
Yeah, so far we're looking at with Monolith. We'll get into the Nemesis system in a minute, because there's something I want to read about that.
I have that down here too.
I mean, why sell Monolith? Why close it down?
I think
how disappointing is that?
I think the biggest problem with them is, I think, just too much meddling from the upper management. Because you can tell with like a lot of these games, because Shadow of War, I don't think was so bad as far as like extra stuff in it. The game came out, people loved it.
If I'm not mistaken, one of them or maybe both of them won Game of the Years.
I think Shadow of Mordor might have, but I know when Shadow of War came out, I actually really liked it. I played them both, but that game definitely had a problem with like loot boxes, where you're getting like random orcs out of it and you don't know what you're going to get until you purchase it, that they actually ended up completely taken out of the game. And I guarantee you that wasn't Monolith's decision to throw that in there. And you can see that in here with like other projects. I know Gotham Knights isn't like particularly under this umbrella or affected by it, but it seems almost like when we played it, that game was underwhelming. It almost seemed like that game was a precursor, or what the idea was to build something like a games as a service. But I guarantee you, Rocksteady didn't come out and they're like, all right, well, we've been crazy, super successful with Batman, and we have this thing that we know is going to work. Let's make Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. We're not that kind of team, but now we're going to make this big games as a service. And that game did absolutely terrible. And I guarantee you that's not their decision. They probably had an idea, and people just meddling from up. Even still, and then we can lead this into the Nemesis system, the fact that instead of making maybe some other sort of game with Wonder Woman, that like an open world action game or something like that, almost like Mordor was, and utilize that Nemesis system, which a lot of people love. Like, oh, well, we're going to scale it back and it'll just kind of be this single player thing. So that almost seems like it's just a meddling direction from up above. So it's like, how do you succeed when you have a good vision and good ideas and you can perform, but then you have somebody constantly saying, well, here, put this in there, put this in there, put this in there, put this in there. It's that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, what I'm understanding too is it really just seems like Rocksteady dropped the ball and Monolith paid the price. Because it's like, why aren't you punishing the team that just cost you hundreds of millions of dollars on a game that was supposed to be an online service game, which they had to cancel, and they had to give it a kind of a cheap ending from what a lot of people were saying. I won't spoil it for you.
I read it. It's bad.
If you do plan on playing it, but it's like, why? I get Rocksteady's maybe the bigger household name, but Monolith is a team that invented probably one of the best innovative ideas in the last 20 years of gaming, which you've heard Andrew and I talk about, the Nemesis system. So if you have it, and just because of this, I actually downloaded, because it's on Game Pass, I downloaded Shadow of War.
Play it.
Because that was the one, and I started, so I'm past the prequel. I got past the Spider Queen.
Oh, nice.
And I'm just starting it. So that's me pouring my drink out for him. So I'm going to now play that. But
I'm glad you're getting around to it.
Yeah. And well, this was the push I needed. Finally, it's like, okay, let me go double check on it and see. So as far as the Nemesis system, if you guys aren't familiar with the games, this is what it is. It's a gameplay mechanic primarily found in the Middle Earth series, where enemies remember previous encounters with the player, creating unique personalities and dynamic relationships between them, allowing them to react differently based on past interactions and even rise in power within their hierarchy depending on how the player engages with them, essentially making each enemy feel more personal and impactful to the gameplay. So for example, if there's characters in the game that you run into and they've beaten you, or vice versa, like they can start getting like upset with you, and they can start raising up in the ranks, and they become these, like, they go from low level grunts, they can become like captains and generals in their army. So it was a really cool system that hasn't been utilized since the last Shadow of War game, which was 7 years ago. So the question has been, like, why have you guys not used this? Why wouldn't you put it in a Batman game? Why wouldn't you put it on a... Because I was looking at it being like... Because there actually was a Christopher Nolan Batman game in development that was using this, where, like, if you're young Batman and you get beaten by somebody, they can kind of start climbing up the ranks to take over districts in Gotham that would rival, like, a Joker and a Penguin and things like that. Which is but it ended up being scrapped, because I think at the time they had the Arkham games going on. So that is what eventually turned into Shadow of War or the middle of Shadow of Mordor games. So it's like, why wouldn't you guys be using this in a Batman game? Why wouldn't you be, or even if you made a new Batman Beyond game? I think that'd be really cool. So the biggest trouble of what a lot of fans right now are kind of scared of what WB is going to do is that WB, even though Monolith Productions invented the system, the Nemesis system, Warner Brothers actually went and patented it, and after several years won the patent in 2021, and they have it until 2035. And the biggest kind of scare is going, are you going to do anything with it? Because the only team that's ever implemented it, and quite well, is now gone. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the Nemesis system? Or I don't know. What are your thoughts on any of what we've talked about?
I think that is the worst part. It almost seems like they're kind of going to take that to the grave. I love as someone who played that one, I love the Nemesis system, because there were certain people that I cut down and then they'd come back for vengeance and try to jump you. Or there's a couple times, because you're overwhelmed with enemies, that captain dude beats you, and then now he's strong, and I'm like, damn it, now I can't contend with that guy till later. And then if I lose again, then he just turns into this big threatening force. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to leave that guy alone for a little bit until I'm OP, and then maybe come back and try to get him. But it just made for this cool dynamic. I think that, but just by the mismanagement alone, I wonder if instead of just trying to buckle down on almost what seems safe, they should do almost like what Marvel does. Like, that we made bad decisions with bad games. We have these cool ideas and this cool system. Let's shop around and find a studio that's perfectly competent in something and not meddle, and let them do our vision. That's why Marvel is finding such success with Insomniac's Spider-Man, after, some of those older Spider-Man games are definitely not good, and the new ones are juggernauts.
Yeah, and again, I don't know. why couldn't you have sold Monolith? Like, what I'm not understanding is why Monolith had to be shut down. You know what I mean? Like, why are you losing it? And again, you're shutting down the only team that can use this system. And again, and if you're going to be focusing on these 4 games, it's like we've already talked about how that could easily fit into a Batman game, and you have an original story of new villains. You could easily put it into a Game of Thrones game where you're betraying people, and your Game of Thrones is going to be different than mine because I sided with these guys and not with these guys. That could definitely be in it. I'm sure you could find a way to put it into a Hogwarts Legacy system. It's like, I'm not sure why you haven't been using something that everybody says is one of the best things in gaming in the last 20 years, and it just seems like it's going to be shelved for 2035, or at least there's nothing pointing at them using it anytime soon.
I think they represent kind of like a larger... This whole thing represents a larger problem in the gaming industry where everybody thinks their next game needs to be successful, needs to be as big as Call of Duty, needs to be as big as the next Grand Theft Auto, as Red Dead Redemption, as these runaway juggernauts, when not everything is going to be like that. And we've already been seeing stuff like that, not just from them, but even with EA more recently. Dead Space did really well. That game was up for Game of the Year. People were giving it 10s. Me and Craig personally love that game. It's so good. And there's no talks of the sequel. They're not interested in doing the sequel because I felt like it underperformed. And for what? The game did extremely well. But when you set these crazy metrics compared to what other people are doing, then of course it's not going to do good. On top of more baffling decisions, like I can understand Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat's been doing its own thing. That's a juggernaut too. But Game of Thrones, I don't think is really relevant as much anymore. It's not the juggernaut that it was in the original series, and that would have been the time to do something, Game of Thrones. I don't know why you wait till now with House of the Dragon when I guarantee you if you were to pull up numbers, a huge fall off. Like, it is not a cultural phenomenon now. It's still good. It's really good, especially if you're into it, but it's not the phenomenon that it was with OG Game of Thrones.
And I was thinking too, at least license the system out, because I was thinking, like, you know how cool it would be to have a Star Wars game, like a real bounty hunter game, and you use the Nemesis system of bounty hunters coming after you. That'd be cool. I was even thinking, because when I was doing the notes, Yakuza seems like it'd be kind of cool to use that with different sections of the mafia guys. It's like, oh, that'd be... So I just think that this system has a lot of uses in multiple games, and it's going to be very unfortunate if it never gets past the Shadows of Mordor games and stuff like that. So... It's unfortunate, but was there anything else you wanted to talk about with these guys shutting down? I did want to, because if not, I just want to touch quickly on Wonder Woman.
No, like I said, it's unfortunate, and then especially like I said, out of everybody, Player First definitely got effed on it because I'm sure it wasn't their decision to pull the game and then re-put it back out there. But Monolith for sure did not deserve it.
Yeah. So with that happening, with Monolith going down. Thus falls the Wonder Woman game, which was announced in December of 2021, and describing it like this. The single-player open-world action game will introduce an original story set in the DC universe and allow players to become Diana of Themyscira in the fight to unite her Amazon family and the humans from the modern world. Now, you could tell there was some trouble. Like, the writing was on the wall. It's been 3 years, and the most we had was like that 30-second little clip. So... it looked, I mean, I'm open for new games. It's just, I don't know if Wonder Woman was the right way to start. And if it's been 3 years and there's nothing to even show, then I feel like this game was already going to get scrapped a while back.
I feel like this one, too, is the one, like, people are the most upset about it, and I'm like, well, I don't really get why, because, yeah, there hasn't been anything, so what did you think was going to happen? Not to mention, there was a lot of rumors going around, and a lot of people saying last year that this game was in development hell, and had to be rebooted and redone from scratch, and restarted over, which cost however much money. But now, of course, now that everything's been canceled and done, you have people, I was working on the game, and it was a gorgeous world and whatever. So now you have two sides to a story, but I'm like, okay, well, I think if you really had something, we would have at least seen something by now, and there was just absolutely nothing.
And I look at it, too, it was a waste of Monolith's time. I mean, they were doing that for 3 years, but their last game was 7 ago, and it's like, man, they could have been doing anything else, and you put them on this. I mean, maybe not at the time it wasn't clear that it was going to be a doomed project, but it's like, you're going to put them on a Wonder Woman game? Like, it's just unfortunate. And again, I don't know why they couldn't have sold it, because it's because it's one thing when you look at it like, oh, Monolith is still running. It's like BioWare. BioWare is not the same team as it was when it was making Mass Effect. So you're losing right now. It's a special team of guys who made two very great games and a unique system where it's like it's gonna really suck to just lose that magic that you had. You had one of the teams that do important, groundbreaking stuff, and they're just gone. Now that's not to say that there's not other spots within WB that maybe they're getting kind of shuffled around to. Maybe they are going to Avalanche or they're going to NetherRealm Studios, but it's just like, why lose that pillar of what was making the few studios you had great? That's just I'll never understand that.
In an industry like this, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel, but I think, with the Nemesis system, they truly did something innovative and then absolutely just squandered it. Yeah. 'Cause it is a really cool system. For those of you who are and like I said, Craig said it's on Game Pass. If you haven't tried it, you don't have to play the first one. You can just jump into the second one if you really want to. I think there's like recap. Read a Wikipedia page and jump in.
Yeah, there's a small recap on it, but it'd be better to find one that somebody made because those ones are always better than the one the game has installed.
But it is good, and it's definitely a system that's worthwhile that would have been good in other games. I'm not saying to overuse it and put it in everything and oversaturate the market, but come on, we've given you tons of examples just throughout the episode now of what it could have been and that would have been a good idea.
Oh, you know what? Let me see. We got time. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick because I accidentally shut out of the question. So, is that everything you want to say on WB? Okay, so unfortunately, guys, they're gone, and hopefully not more comes with it. But it just Monolith got the bad end of that deal. So let's move on, guys, to questions of the week. If you guys want to submit a question Andrew and I can answer on the show, you can do so a couple of different ways. You can email us at lastcallproductions@gmail.com. You can leave a comment in the YouTube section of the video, or you can find me on social media at Craig Perales, and I can take it there. And this question comes from Zulema Ross, and they write, "The new Pokemon Presents just dropped, and it looked amazing. Did you guys catch it? It really catch them. It really seems like they're doing a lot to get Pokemon moving forward in the right direction." So I kind of missed it. I think you wrote me last night. You wrote me last night about it.
Yeah.
And then I watched some of the trailers, and then I was talking to our friend Casey Court about it, and he was like, "Oh, there's a lot more to it." So just kind of quickly, unless my mouse just died. There's a lot to it. It's about 20 minutes. It's on their Pokemon channel. I would say go check it out. It actually was, if you're into, even if it's just one of the things, there was a lot there to take away. The Pokemon Concierge show that's on Netflix in September. There's actually, I think they said it's 3 to 6 episodes that are out right now on YouTube. They're giving you a sneak peek. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely go check that out. There's some stuff on the Pokemon Cafe. We're not going to dive too far into that. There's a lot more updates and battles happening with Pokemon Go. And then the MOBA game, which I believe was Pokemon Unite. They've got a few new characters. The two things I just want to touch on, just because they're going to be games that are coming. Actually, and then one other thing too was the Pokemon card game app. I guess right now is doing all kinds of gangbuster stuff. Like it's the best way to play. It's got all kinds of new packs. Geno actually was playing it. And I don't know if he sent it in the Gamer Snapchat or just sent it to mine, but he's been playing it. I think Chet's been playing it. So there's a lot of updates with that if you guys were interested in it. As far as the games that they showed off, the first one was Pokemon Champions, which is a game planned by Game Freak and developed by Pokemon Worlds. It's a game that's going to be on the Switch as well as the mobile, and it's kind of like an old school. What it looks to me is like when back in the day we had Stadium, we had Coliseum, we had Pokken Tournament. It looks like this is the next big fighting game, and the coolest thing that they're kind of showing off is that it actually links to Pokemon Home, which can do your Pokemon Go guys, your Pokemon Scarlet and Violet guys. So it's actually able to move all these guys into a tournament style game. What did you think of it? Or is there anything else? Did I miss anything?
I personally wouldn't really play it because I'm not really into that, but I do like the idea of, well, maybe just because I would rather just play a computer like old school Pokemon Stadium style, but it's definitely cool. There's definitely a huge market for something like that, so I think that's going to be something great, especially if someone from their phone could just do whatever in between, while you're on a break or something like that. Just something easy and accessible, or you can play it on your console, and I wonder if it seems like it is cross play. Like if I'm playing on my phone, I could be playing someone on a Switch or something like that. I don't know because I don't think they like said too much, but that's kind of the way it looked. Or at least, very least, maybe the progress I make on here is going to transfer to everything else, which would be nice. So either way, if you're not going to give us another stadium, I think it's cool, and there's definitely people out there who need something like that.
Yeah, I kind of want to hear more what Casey has to say about it, because he was kind of saying this is going to move the competition world and like all the battling, all that stuff in different ways. So that's really exciting. My biggest issue is like the moment it's a cross-platform or a cross-play game with mobile, it's like I'm already nervous because Nintendo doesn't have the best online infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you're pairing it with phones and things like that. So I'm nervous on that aspect. But, I mean, hopefully they can get it going. The only thing I was reading, too, that I think people weren't sure on is that it's actually going to be... Let's see, I'll read this from Gamertag. It says, Pokemon Champions will limit the selection of Pokemon that players can select from at launch. While Pokemon Champions appears set to incorporate a lot of different elements and mechanics from across the Pokemon franchise, the option to choose between the full catalog of more than 1,000 existing Pokemon won't be one of them. And there's more on that, but I'd imagine that would be... I mean, that doesn't bother me in any way. It's like, yeah, at launch, we've got to start somewhere. And then the reason why you keep playing is every quarter we launch 50 more guys. 50. You know, that to me, that's really cool.
I think they even said on there, too, especially if you're not like a big Pokemon person who's, you know, playing every little thing to have to be able to import them, like me just jumping in. I think there's like rental teams that you could use.
Yeah,
so
that way, I saw something like that, too.
So that way you can just jump. I'm like, okay, that's cool. That makes it very accessible for people who maybe haven't played in a while, because then it doesn't seem so daunting. Like, okay, I have something to work with, some sort of baseline, and I could go from there.
Nice. And then obviously the last game that they mentioned that we want to talk about is Pokemon Legends ZA, which is an upcoming 2025 video game developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company for the Nintendo Switch. It was announced in February of 2024, and Legends ZA is part of the 9th generation of Pokemon video games and a sequel to Pokemon X and Y. Now, I never played X and Y, so I don't know how sequel it is. I don't know if maybe it's the same professor and things, but it did kind of show off a lot. And one of the main things, obviously, is it's showing off the starters, which was Tepig, Chikorita, and Totodile. So they're actually pulling from like some Gen 2 and things like that. Now,
I'd go Totodile.
I think a lot of people will, because he's just Feraligatr, whatever he turns into. Feraligatr. He's got some really cool things he can do with moves. Is this the first time we're not getting 3 original starters, or is it because it's a spin-off or a sequel to XY, then maybe it's just not a new game that requires 3? But when I was looking at it first, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But at the same time, I'm like, I think, and I hope this is maybe pointing in the right direction, I think we're done adding 200 Pokemon every time. Like, we've got plenty. Even if you just make more games with just starters, I think that's enough. But, I mean, are you disappointed not to see 3 new starters? That's if I was interpreting it correctly. I think these are the starters.
I was like, I don't. Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. That wouldn't bug me at all. I think more what I was disappointed at. I like Chikorita too. I know there's a few fans who do, but I think what would have been a better so just take some from different generations. So you have 2 from the same generation and then 1 from a different generation. So why not just do 1, 1, and 1 from different points in time? Yeah. Like that would have been like a far better idea. But I mean, how many great grass Pokemon are really out there that are starters? I
think it'd be kind of cool if just the game gave you the option to play any of the starters from any of them, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure eventually we'll get there. I think
that actually would have been a really cool idea too, to just have, okay, well here's...
Yeah, do you want to start with Gen 2,
Here's
Gen 3,
here's
Gen
12
4?
People to choose from.
Yeah, so, and obviously we got to look at the new ally rival. I already forget their names, but they look like they're twins, the boy and the girl, so they're kind of following that mold, right? One of the things that they pointed out is that in this city, because it seems like they're in like a technological revamp of this big town, like, what was it called? Lumios?
It's Lumios. It's definitely French for sure. Some sort of like
it has that thing, sound, yeah.
That thing's supposed to look like
Eiffel Tower?
The Eiffel Tower, yeah. There's like a big tower in there. So it definitely seems very like France inspired.
Nice. And it shows that in this place is going to be, because it's going to be the big city that humans and Pokemon live together. And it seems like there's going to be sections that are just Pokemon inhabited, which they're going to be calling wild zones. Now, they have
in the middle of streets.
Yeah, they have numbers on the gates, so I'm just guessing that's just the order of how you have to do it. Like, that's going to be the power level. You're not going to jump to 8. I'd like it better if and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, if the 1s and 2s and 3 wasn't a power level representative. It was more of like, oh, grass is here, rocks is here, and things like that. But I don't know, it didn't look terrible. But again, no, it's only in the city. Are you going to be able to go outside, I didn't really see anything that points that you would.
That's more been my big thing, is I like to go to these different places. Like, even in the last one, I don't care for the chick who's like a streamer, but I do like that it's like that seaside weird electric city where they're all hyped for electric Pokemon, and it almost seems like each city has like their own culture and something. So that's kind of what I prefer, versus it almost seems like a little like block by block or something.
Yeah.
I think my bigger problem with this is I don't think it was the trailer. I think just be watching it, it seemed like the frame rate ran like shit.
Won't say welcome to the Switch.
And so I was just like, man, dude, you guys still just can't figure this out, because it's not like you're doing anything that other people aren't already doing 100 times better, and you can't just figure it out on your own hardware. This is one of your biggest teams that you could give them this fucking recipe for Coke and they'll guard it with their life, and you just still can't figure it out.
Well, I mean, again, who knows what it's going to look like playing on a Switch 2, and maybe this is the move to get it if that's what you want to play it at. On their website, they also showed what the map's going to look like, so I'm also curious if are you just in this town the whole time, or are you able to leave? Like, is it just going to be multiple levels? Like, you know what I mean? Like, are you going to go to the tower, and then that's where each gym member is? You know, you take out a floor. So I am kind of interested in that, and we'll see more. And then obviously one of the...
I'm going to talk all the shit I want. I'll get it.
Oh, no, we're getting it. I always get the first one. I always get, like, red, blue, gold, silver. So I'll get Z, I imagine, if you're going to get... A. But the other thing, too, is that Mega Evolutions are coming back. And also the Terra stabilization that was in the last few games. Those are going to be back in this game. And I think as well as Champions. But the biggest thing that looked cool was the positioning of the combat. It's no longer just going to be go. You're actually going to be able to move around with your Pokemon. It looks like dodging fire attacks. Like, you're actually going to be able to move and dodge. And then it shows that the Pokemon that you're fighting with, their moves are actually going to have a range and like AoE effects. So it seems like shifting them out at certain points to trigger certain moves is going to be kind of what the combat is what separates them from older games. This is something new, which I thought was as cool as it gets.
I've always just liked how basic it is, because after seeing how everything else the game runs, that I don't know, I have faith that that'll be the best employed thing to do. But I'll take it. I would like to try it. I'm very interested, but I am going to talk shit.
Hey, very interested. So that was just a quick shout out, guys, for Pokemon. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube, all 20 minutes of it that had everything else. But leave your comments down below of what you thought about it. But that'll do it, guys, for episode 210. Join us next time for episode 211. Until next time, my name is Craig Perales. That is Major Montemay. Cheers.
See you in the hunting grounds.